Welcome everyone. My name is Sean Rogash. I'm from the MAV team and I'm really excited about tonight's session. I'll start by respectfully acknowledging the traditional owners of this land. I'm here in the MAV office, so it's the Wurundjeri Woi-wurrung people and the traditional owners of country throughout Victoria. I recognise their continuing connection to lands, waters and community, and I pay my respect to elders past, present, who carry the stories, traditions, cultures, and aspirations of First People, and who forge the path ahead for emerging leaders. And if you'd like to, feel free to acknowledge the traditional owners from where you're tuning in from tonight. Thank you very much for your attendance tonight on this very gloomy Melbourne evening for tonight's June MAVlab Innovation Talks, From Access to Belonging, Creating Public Spaces for Everybody. If you enjoyed tonight's talk, Gemma has given me strict instructions to give a little plug to the MAVlab's e-newsletter. It's a great source of all things MAVlab. So head over to the MAV website, and if I can be cheeky enough, Gemma, I'll also say head over to MAV's social media pages as well, because we keep lots of MAVlab information and all other MAV information on there as well. And there's always amazing content, as you'll find out tonight. We've got an amazing array of speakers from within the sector for you tonight, but I'm perhaps most excited about introducing my colleague and friend, the amazing Gemma Baxter. Regular MAVlab Innovation Talk attendees will know from the first 14 Innovation Talks that Gemma is usually introducing the show, as I am now. But for talk number 15, she's graduating for the first time as host of the whole session. Gemma is a powerhouse and behind much of the work that you see from MAVlab, so I'm sure she'll do an incredible job tonight. And with that, Gemma, over to you.
Sean, that wasn't in the script.
I know, I wrote that one for you.
Thank you so much. It was wonderful to have you support me tonight and support all of these incredible speakers. I am so excited about this topic and to hear about these case studies that you're about to hear. Before we hand over and hear from them, let me just ground us all in the reason why we're here today and the topic we're going to discuss. Now, we know that our public spaces are meant to be shared by everyone. The places we go to relax, connect, be active, our parks, our beaches, our libraries, even our community events. But the reality is that's not everyone's experience. For many Victorians living with disability, these spaces can be difficult to navigate, really tiring to access, or sometimes just out of reach altogether. And often those barriers aren't obvious unless you've experienced them yourself, but the impact is felt every day. That's where local government plays an incredibly important role, and that's why we've invited these speakers to share their experiences tonight. Our councils are helping shape these everyday experiences, often in ways that really, really matter. So when we move beyond just meeting minimum standards, beyond compliance for compliance sake, that's when things start to shift. The examples you'll see tonight will show you that these public spaces and events can go from being technically accessible to genuinely welcoming. I'm really excited to hand over to Karen. Karen is going to share a bit about their exciting project in the city of Frankston. Karen McMahon is the Diversity and Inclusion Project Manager, and she's had social work experience for over 20 years, which is absolutely incredible, specialising in community engagement, co-design and inclusive practices. And she's going to tell us about their most accessible beach pilot and some of the outcomes and learnings. It's a national first that has helped set a new benchmark for accessible coastal experiences. I'm really excited to hand over to you, Karen. Take it away.
Thank you, Gemma. I really appreciate being invited along today. I could talk about this topic underwater, I reckon, so bear with me. I'm really excited to share. I will just share my screen. Hopefully that's working nicely. Can everyone see that? Fantastic. So yeah, my name's Karen McMahon. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the Diversity and Inclusion Project Manager at Frankston City Council. And I'm going to talk about our Australia's Most Accessible Beach pilot program that we ran last summer. I'd like to start by acknowledging that this project took place on the traditional lands of the Bunurong people, and that's where I'm joining from today. So I pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. So being able to access the beach is such an Australian thing to do. We often see images like this of, life-saving clubs and things like that to depict Australian culture. And yet it is so tricky for so many people to do. And this is what our community told us loud and quite strongly when we were engaging our community for feedback for our Disability Action Plan back in 2021. So it was one of our main priorities moving forward, but I was quite a novice in the space when I started out, so it really took a lot of diving into and working out what we needed to know about this space before we decided on a project. So we spoke to our disability and positive ageing committees who really supported what the community said and spoke about how much there was struggle in the community to access our beaches. We spoke to life-saving clubs, Frankston Yacht Club, environmental groups, all sorts of groups to find out what was going on. Beaches are really hard to access for people with mobility challenges, who are uneasy on their feet or who use wheelchairs, mobility scooters, walking frames, walking sticks or crutches, people recovering from injury, families with prams and beach buggies, people who are ill or who are affected by their treatments, people with sensory processing challenges, and people who are vision impaired. For example, when they're walking along the beach, it's really hard for them to identify a point for where they need to exit again. So I started exploring what equipment was available to support access to the beach, what our neighbouring councils were doing, and I know that some of them are joining us here today who were on a beach access network, which I found out existed, and it was a wealth of information. I found out there's a peak advocacy body called Accessible Beaches Australia, and also that there's a micro course available at CQ University about beach access. So we really dug into what was going on in this space. And then we started out small. So we teamed up. Our first project was to team up with Rotary Peninsula 2.0, who did some fundraising to purchase some beach matting, which was going to be rolled out at Frankston Yacht Club. And this is the launch here, you can see in the picture. So that was a partnership between Frankston, Rotary and Accessible Beaches. And it was here that Shane from Accessible Beaches Australia approached our mayor actually to tell us about this audacious idea that he wanted to bring to Australia. So when he'd been travelling overseas, Shane came across a beach in Nice, France, where, there was a network of beach matting, there was umbrellas, there was sun lounges, all sorts of wheelchairs. And he said it was the most fabulous time. He wanted to see it in Australia, but he hadn't had any luck with any of the other councils to make that happen. Our mayor was thrilled and decided, yes, absolutely, we want to do that. So we did a bit of research. It went to council. Council approved it, and the fundraising and all the work began. So this is what we delivered. We ended up delivering 70 metres of beach access matting pathways. So you can see this is our actual beach here. So the matting is really important because it gives a stable ground for people underfoot, more than certainly the soft sand. And so the idea is that it helps people get across the soft sand. Also gives a good surface if people want to use their wheelchairs to get across the soft sand to the hard sand and into the water. We also have 7 bookable cool cabanas. So we can see here that them all set up. It was really important for them to be there because we heard from our project advisory committee, which was made up of people with lived experience and people working in the disability and aged care services field, that a lot of people have trouble regulating their temperature. So shade is really vital and often one of the major barriers that attracts people at the beach. We have, under each bookable cool cabana, we had 2 sun lounges or chairs. We had a variety of things to choose from. So our accessible sun lounges were wheelchair height, so made it really easy for people who were able to transfer across. We also had some sun chairs that had armrests for those that needed the extra support to get up from the chair. Next slide. We had 5 different beach wheelchairs, so just some of them are pictured here. And it was really important that we had a variety. That's the feedback our advisory committee gave us, because there were so many different needs in the community. So we've got more upright chairs, more sporty low slung chairs that made it easy to sort of touch the water. The beach wheelchair you can see in the picture with the orange floaties actually helps the entire chair float. And it was by far the most popular, because it was really quite an experience to see people out there floating in the water for the first time in ages. We also had 2 different beach walking frames. The reason we had 2 different ones was mainly because of the height that the different walkers allowed us to have. And we also had a hoist to help transfer people into the wheelchairs if needed. Unfortunately, because we needed a stable surface for the hoist, we weren't able to use that on the beach, but transfers occurred up on the concrete beach boulevard. We also had program staff and volunteers to assist people when they arrived, show them to where their cool cabana was, help them select out what equipment they would like to use, and also to give them an extra, hand when getting in and out of the water, because as we know, at the water's edge, it's usually quite steep. We had life jackets if people needed some extra support in the water, and also life-saving volunteers were as part of this program. And some people might find this a bit more boring, but our Disability Advisory Committee and age-friendly ambassadors told us really strongly that one of the biggest barriers of going anywhere is that there is never enough parking spaces. So obviously, having an attraction like this meant that we're going to bring a lot more people with disabilities into our area. So we installed 5 new overflow accessible parking bays. They were temporary, just because we didn't want to put a lot of money into something that we didn't know if they were in the right spot. And as this was a pilot, this was just, let's see how they go. Let's get feedback from our community. And it ended up, they were great, but there were more useful identified areas, such as near the toilet block, that we might look to doing them in future. So, yeah, it was really important that we had 9 accessible parking bays servicing this area, which people were thrilled about. They were probably more excited about this than anything, a lot of them. And on top of all this, we delivered a program access guide that really talked people through what to expect when they arrived at the program booking, what sort of equipment was there. We had all the specifications so they could see what would be appropriate for them before they arrived. And we also provided communication boards with icons for people that may struggle to talk verbally. They can point out the things that they wanted to go to help them communicate with their carers and program staff. So in the end, our pilot operated from December 2025 to the end of February 2026. We operated 3 days a week, from Thursdays to Saturdays, from 10:30 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. Over the summer, we did have some planned off days because of Christmas Day and also our Waterfront Festival. We also had to close because of extreme weather on a couple of days. It got really windy where equipment was starting to blow around, so we had to close up, unfortunately. But yeah, 30.5 operational days in all. We had 247 groups come through, so at least 456 participants. Plus, we noticed that a lot of the community who hadn't registered for the program were really making use of our matting that was out there. It was available for everyone to use. So we did find that a lot of families made use of that matting to help them get down the water and across the soft sand. But I really wanted to share the human impact and who used it, the type of people that we came into contact with. So I had someone that called up and said that they used to spend every opportunity they could at the beach when they were growing up, but then all of a sudden they had an accident and they hadn't been in years. I also had a family, well, a number of families ring up actually to say that they wanted to book in so they could take their loved ones to the beach for one last time. It was a bucket list item for them, so that was really touching. We had a family that travelled for over 2 hours in a maxi taxi to give their daughter her first ever day at the beach because the equipment allowed her to do that. We had aged care facilities and disability services that were keen to arrange an outing day for their residents or participants, and also had social groups come together and arrange to meet. So we had a deaf-blind social group where members literally came from all over Victoria just to check this program out. So it was really exciting and a wide variety of people used it. And the human impact's really important. So we had 41% of respondents told us that they had not been able to access the beach in over 7 years. So some beaches have matting, some beaches might have wheelchairs, but it was really the full package that we delivered. The cool cabanas that they didn't have to bring down and set up, the sun lounges where they could relax. The fact that everything was there and set up for them really made it easy. So someone said the staff, mats and beach chair made it accessible to join the beach with my grandchildren and family for the first time in 20 years. 100% of survey respondents reported experiencing health and wellbeing benefits as a result of participating in the pilot, and some of those benefits included relaxation, improved mood, connection with family and friends, feeling a connection with community, with nature, experiencing physical movement, and a positive sensory experience. Someone else said, I had the best day I had had in a long time at the beach today. Being able to access the beach and go in the water was amazing for my mental health, and the program ran seamlessly. I really hope this comes back. Someone else said, I'm so happy to have this program available for like-minded people who are disabled and absolutely adore the water. And you'll see in this picture, these are two separate groups. But they arrived at the beach and they were just so keen to socialise. So they asked staff if their cool cabanas could be moved together so they could really chat and meet new people while they were there. So I loved hearing that story. There are also really good benefits to council that I think it's important to point out. So we received best practice advice from Accessible Beaches Australia and the Pilot Program Advisory Committee. Without them, we couldn't have done it. We had 32 community sponsors committed to improving access and inclusion, and 40 registered volunteers to help out at the pilot. So it was really a whole community approach. Every team across council, I think, was involved in some way. So it really brought the community together. It certainly helps our reputation. So we had 5.12 million views on social media, attracting national and international attention. Positive mainstream news articles, comments on radio, crosses to breakfast television, and even proud local community members reached out to media outlets requesting that they share the news of the pilot. So it was really nice that our community wanted to help us promote this program. Also, there were certainly tourism and economic benefits. 74% of participants came from outside Frankston City. Many visitors travelled hours across Victoria and beyond to get to the program. 94% stated the pilot program was their main reason for their visit, and 81% of participants spent money in the local community during their visit, including at cafes, restaurants, shops, the arts, and also accommodation. So what's next? Well, thanks to our generous community sponsors, we've got enough money left over from the pilot to run the program again next summer. So we're getting ready to do that, which is really exciting. We've applied for an Accessible Australia Initiative funding to build a changing places facility on site, because that was certainly a barrier that was pointed out to us by community that we didn't have. And so for those of you who don't know, a changing places is a fully accessible bathroom with ceiling tracked hoist, adult size, height adjustable change table. It's got a toilet and a shower, all sorts of things. So it's a fantastic facility. We're awaiting the outcome of that at the moment, but we're we've got all our ducks in a row. So as soon as we get the word, hopefully, we can start building that. And we're also going to explore how we can facilitate community access to the wheelchairs and walkers outside of the program's operating hours. So the inclusion and joy for this program is priceless, and I'd love to see it continued and replicated at other councils. So we really had a ball putting this program together, and if anyone is interested in replicating it or doing something similar in their council, I encourage you to do so. Start small, listen to your community and their feedback, learn from other professionals. There are so many people doing great things. And also, I recommend identifying your change makers and inviting them in to see the impact firsthand, because then they will be your strongest advocates. So that's the end of my presentation today. I will stop sharing. I hope I haven't gone over time. I apologise if I have. Like I said, I could talk about it forever. So thank you.
Brilliant, Karen. And it's clear how passionate you are about it. And I'm sure it's a huge testament to you that, this project, you and the team, that this project has been successful. Congratulations. I had a few questions for you and then you kept answering them. So also brilliant and thorough presentation. That was awesome. I did have a question. I think when we think about pilots, we think about, the minimum viable product. What is required? What is the smallest amount of space, funding, stakeholders to engage in order to deliver and test if something is feasible, right, and offers value? What sort of considerations did you have when you decided, 70 meters of beach? And then how will that translate, I guess, if you were to operationalize and run it every summer? Was that a good size? Was that a good number of staff? Sort of, what are you thinking about from pilot to scaling?
So we certainly started small. We just started with the matting initially. The size of this pilot program ended up, it was so much more complicated than you thought. We had to talk to environmental teams and beach cleaning teams about the processes that happen on the beach. But ultimately we decided that amount because the tide came in a certain distance over summer. We didn't want to take up too much beach and because it is a public space. But one other thing I wanted to point out is where we located it was actually right next to the pier, which if you've been to Frankston, that's the heart of Frankston Beach. It's visible from everywhere. And that was one of the other impacts. It really got community talking and seeing and wanting to be involved. I never thought about disability access before. And yeah, it was fantastic.
It's absolutely incredible work. And I think just having all of that equipment and all of those support devices, as you said, is a really good way of people understanding some of the barriers that people face to accessing places that they may just take for granted, like car parks, and change areas. So Karen, absolutely incredible work. We're going to come back for questions later. So if anyone has any questions, please feel free to think of them, drop them in the chat. We are going to hand over now and hear from Catherine in the City of Greater Geelong about another public space that we're all probably familiar with, our playgrounds and our play spaces. This project is called the Rippleside Inclusive Play Space, and it's a sensory-rich play space with communication supports and access to a changing places facility. We're hearing a lot about that tonight. Catherine has 30 years of local government experience and a lifelong connection to the Geelong region. She's passionate about delivering high-quality public spaces that respond to community needs and enhance livability. Rippleside is absolutely a testament to that, Catherine. We're so excited to hear more about it.
Thanks, Gemma. See how this goes, presenting. Here we go. Thanks, Gemma. I'm presenting from Wadawurrung country here in Geelong, and I'm the project officer with the open space planning team at the city, and very excited to share this awesome project. We've created a space that's welcoming and genuinely inclusive, and a space that's been really embraced by our community. First, a little bit about Geelong. We are regional Victoria's largest city by population and one of Australia's fastest growing municipalities. Currently, our population is nearly 300,000, and this is expected to grow by 47% over the next 20 years. So we are quite a large council. As you can see, our little municipal boundaries there, and we're located 75 kilometres southwest of Melbourne on Corio Bay. We're also very proud to be Australia's only city of design and a member of the UNESCO Creative City Network. Here is our Rippleside play space. So it's a space where we it's a Libby's place who we've partnered with, and it's a regionally significant destination play space where inclusion is designed into every detail. It was guided by the principles of the UN Convention of the Rights of the Child that states that play is a fundamental human right for every child. So we try to remove all the barriers, such as physical, sensory, and social barriers, so people of all ages and all abilities can play together. We aim to make it as inclusive as possible. So that means not only the play equipment, but all the supporting infrastructure, such as the furniture and the paths and the toilets, the car parking, they were all made accessible too. We developed the play space with real extensive community engagement. It went out to the community 3 times, and we also use specialist designers as well. It's located within Rippleside Park in a central Bayside suburb, right in the centre of Geelong. And it was officially opened last October by Richard Marles, and he was the acting Prime Minister at the time, so we're pretty chuffed. Why the project matters. It's significant because it's not just about accessibility, but genuine inclusion, and it goes beyond the compliance-based accessibility. We want all children to be able to play, not just side by side, but actually play together. So we have an example of some accessible play equipment at Eastern Park in Geelong. It's a Liberty swing. So it's a swing that you can wheel your wheelchair onto. So it's very accessible, but it's not inclusive. You need a key to use it. You're only one kid at a time. It's fenced. So you're not playing with your mates or your family, and you're behind a fence. So you're different and you're excluded. So we aim to change this with a play space that is totally inclusive. So the benefits are that kids get to play together, and that also fosters empathy and understanding. There are therapeutic benefits for motor skill development and coordination and sensory engagement. And it's a space where families can gather and connect and relax. And if families are feeling safe and included, they will visit more often, and they'll stay longer, and they'll feel supported. So, yeah, we feel that this approach sets a benchmark for our future inclusive infrastructure here at the city. The play space was designed for challenge, dignity, and choice. So what does that look like? We tried to include natural elements like plantings and landscaping, and there's sand and there's water and there's play zones for sensory play. There's sensory walls with little bells and knobs and locks and things to tinker with for fine motor skills. And you can see on the little green mushrooms there on the left, they've got lots of little doors and bells and things to play with. We've got quiet zones for regulation, and they're in our landscape natural areas. We have activities for gross motor skills, such as like in-ground trampolines and ground level carousels and rockers and things that you can roll straight onto. We have flying foxes with inclusive seats. We've got so many swings. We've got one of every type of swing, so like nest swings, hammocks, inclusive seats, and the double little you and me seats as well. So that photo there up on the top left is the you and me swing, which is really fun. There's a big multi-level structure, and that's accessible right to the highest point of the play space. And there are also hard and easy options to access the top of the play structure. And yeah, once you're up there, you've got a great view over the bay. It's got lots of under-deck activities like little cubbies and small places and quiet spots, but there's also spots with activity like musical elements, climbing, puzzles, that sort of thing. And there's a choice of lots of slides off the main structure, and they've got transfer-friendly options too. We had access audits done during the design phase just to ensure that we were that, our planning, we were fit for purpose. And an interesting approach was expressed by a consultant who was a wheelchair user himself, that we should have access options, so like hard and easy, and he explained that kids using mobility devices will come across challenge every day in the real world. So if they could come across some challenge in a controlled environment like the play space, potentially they can utilise their experiences in the real world. When we did our community engagement, we found that it wasn't necessarily the play equipment that made the play space inclusive, it was all the supporting infrastructure. So some of the questions we kind of had to ask ourselves was not only can we play, but can we get there and can we stay? So we needed to provide infrastructure that removes that participation barriers and enables inclusion. So we did that by providing fully accessible toilets with every cubicle option so everyone can use it, and that includes a changing places with a hoist. We've got family cubicles big enough for prams, and also little child-size toilet pans. So yeah, anyone can use it. And you can access the toilets from either side of the play space fence too, but if you enter from the play space side, you can't escape out onto the road. It's fully fenced, the play space, so that was something we heard loud and clear in the engagement, that people wanted that, and that improved safety and predictability of the space. We've got site-wide DDA accessible paths, and we've also got colour-coded concrete for wayfinding to support that independent movement. We've got communication boards with Pictograms and Auslan, and that's we co-designed that with Scope, and that helps kids communicate, what they would like to do and how they'd like to use the space. And then we've got all the usual things like shade and seating and picnic areas that enable sort of longer stays. And then on the outside of the fence line, we've got our accessible car parking and drop-off bays. So in short, our play space was inclusive by developing these supporting documents as well that users can download or view online. So we've got an access key and a social story. So developing the access key and the social story was a first for Geelong in our parks, but we worked together with Access Australia, who helped co-design the documents. And they're detailed guides to help prepare users before they visit and help to reduce anxiety. So they explain things like the safety and access information, the layout and direction of the space, the sensory sort of cues where the quiet places are, where the busy areas are, and amenities and where everything is. So I'll provide links to those documents in the chat later on. So our key lessons are that inclusion must be intentional right from vision through delivery. So achieving a truly inclusive outcome required a strong commitment to the co-designing, great partnerships, expert input, and listening to people with lived experience. And this all ensured that the space responded to real community needs. Persistence was critical in our situation because it took more than 6 years to actually get this up and running. And sticking to our guns too with the vision, because particularly where budgets were under pressure and sort of value management was our alternative, we chose to seek additional funding rather than drop the scope. So even though it took several years to secure, we ended up with funds from all levels of government, private corporate funders, partnership with Libby's Place. So yeah, persistence sort of ensured that the project was able to retain the features and make it genuinely unique, and it was a really special place. Yes, it took a long time, but the slog was definitely worth it. So we've had at least 250,000 visits recorded since its opening in August last year. We've done a post-construction survey, and 50% of people said they actually come to Geelong especially to go to the play space. So that's really positive for our tourism, and it's actually more popular than some of our regional tourist attractions like the gallery and the carousel and the Wool Museum. So we're pretty happy with that. Social media has been very positive, and kind of unusual for local government. We've had content creators and influencers cover the space, and videos and things that they've posted have attracted like 63,000 views was one of them. So yeah, really successful. And just to finish, I'm excited to let you know that just last Thursday, we're awarded the Parks and Leisure Australia Regional Awards of Excellence for play space over $1 million. So yeah, we're really proud that we're able to create the space, and every child and every family feels welcome. So thank you.
Absolutely beautiful work, Catherine. Thank you so much for sharing. What struck me as someone who's been to many parks, and I'm sure a lot of you on the call would have also been to lots of playgrounds with young people, is what the message that you're sending through the playground design, that, you know, you said even the highest spaces of that playground are accessible by all. Yeah. And I think that's amazing. You know, if a little person is going up the ramp or, you know, questioning it, it's just that the message you're saying is that inherently everyone is able to access this space, rather than, well, there are options over there, or there is, you know, as you said, a swing that is in a special area that's kind of locked off and separate. It's more that the place by design is just designed for everyone. So that's incredible to see.
Lovely.
Amazing. Now we are going to switch it up a bit. We're going to go from places to programs, which is really exciting. We're going to discover Disability at Dusk, which is a welcoming, inclusive community event led by the Southern Regional Disability Alliance. So you've got the City of Casey, Cardinia Shire and Greater Dandenong City Council all working together. Now it's a pleasure to introduce Alexander Bignell, who will take us behind the scenes. Alex is a Disability Inclusion Advisor at City of Casey, Chair of the Australian Local Government Association Disability Inclusion Community of Practice, and a member of the Victorian Local Government Disability Planning Network Steering Committee, who we'll learn about next with Kelly. Alex, you've got an incredible host of roles helping to advocate for and drive inclusive and accessible design. Thank you for the work that you do. I'm going to hand over to you so you can tell us a little bit about this incredible program.
Thank you so much. And it feels like an incredibly hard act to follow after Karen and Catherine have given us those incredible presentations. And I'm just so incredibly proud to be part of the local government sector, doing all this incredible work for disability inclusion. And it's certainly a passion of mine. It's a special interest. I'm autistic, and I absolutely love the opportunities that we get in local government to have a real impact for our communities. But today I'm going to talk to you about a special inclusive event that we ran via the Southern Region, which is the City of Casey, Cardinia and City of Greater Dandenong. But before I get into the event, I just wanted to talk a little bit about the problem and why we had an event that was really targeted at people with disability. I think that, you know, we all know that local government does some terrific mainstream events. So these are things that families can go out and enjoy, and that certainly there'll be accessible features within these events, and that they are really open to everybody. But the reality is there are some people that continue to experience barriers. So those barriers are physical, but they're also cognitive and sensory. And we're beginning to pay a lot more attention to the latter, so cognitive and sensory access. And, you know, I'm autistic and my family's autistic, and I know I've spoken to Karen many times about we try to go to our local events and we fail and we have to come home because something has become inaccessible for us. And so we really wanted to create that mainstream event experience on a really large scale, but just for people with disability, so that that burden of trying to make things accessible doesn't land squarely on the shoulders of those people, their families and carers. So the event was called Disability at Dusk, and it was held at my Farm in Doveton in November 2025. And as I said, it was basically done through the Southern Region Disability Alliance, because it was almost impossible to do an event at this scale via a single council. So Southern Region Disability Alliance has been around for a while, and we've been networking through our community service providers for a long time, but recently had a bit of a strategic think about what we wanted to do and realised that we're really just three councils, and what can we do together? Well, we can do what one council does, but just a lot bigger or better. And so Disability at Dusk was that first approach into doing programs at a larger scale in partnership. And we formed a community group through our disability advisory committees. Most councils will have a disability advisory group or committee. And we had several members from each area come in and just basically start to plan the event and tell us really what they wanted from an event like this. And they actually named the event, which I think was really special. Often disability is a confronting word for people. Sometimes we try to make it a euphemism, but really they wanted it front and center. That's what the event was about. And it was really about promoting disability pride. So you might be wondering, what on earth would we be doing in an event to make it really super accessible? Well, we had a number of strategies, and we really dug deep into each of these strategies. And the first was thinking about our access guide and our wayfinding. So Catherine mentioned, I think also Karen's presentation mentioned an access guide or an access key, and this is a growing tool, basically. An access key is an umbrella term for a series of tools. So they could be symbols or an access guide or a sensory story that gives people prior information about an event so that it becomes more accessible. So for example, autistic people have a set of tactics that's actually named academically. They're called spatial tactics, right? And it's about, I guess, trying to understand what's going on in the event before we arrive so that we're really calm when we arrive and we know all the bits and bobs. So we actually designed a special map that actually took into account that people aren't really always going to understand a map. They're not always going to read the words. So we've got special symbols here that talk about the not just the amenities, but actually the attractions. These are also color coded, and these were translated on the ground into large signs that match the map, so that people were actually really able to see where they were. So another example from an autistic person is that we experience something called central coherence issues. So when you process a lot of information, it's called central coherence, and your brain makes sense of what's around you. But when you're disturbed by too much sensory information, this completely sends you off kilter and can create anxiety, but also confusion. So you could become lost in a pretty simple space, and having these big signs and understanding how they relate to the map is really useful. We created a new model of access volunteers. So at events, you might see maybe the event organisers. You occasionally might have someone who's giving information, but very rarely. So the access volunteers were council officers from the three councils, and we had so many people nominate or volunteer. It was virtually unheard of. We allocated each of the volunteers to the particular activities, and they helped to manage the queues, answer questions, manage expectations, help people communicate and remove barriers before they became an issue. And as you can see from the picture on the bottom right, that's our lovely Jacqueline, and they really just help create an incredibly warm atmosphere. And the picture on the left is from the access guide, so people knew what to expect and that there'll be lots of people there to assist with access. We thought really carefully about accessible activities. One of the things my Unifarm is famous for is they call it train rides, but it's essentially a tractor that pulls along carriages. And we actually had an accessible carriage, which would actually take a wheelchair. And we heard that this was actually some of the first time that people in a wheelchair have been able to access an activity like this. So that was really great. We had a stage with performances, and this is one of the DJs from Burke and Beyond, who are incredible. They have lived experience of disability, and they were so excited, and the whole crowd was so excited. And there was a wonderful story of a family with a severely disabled child who needed to be basically set up in a special swing chair. And they said to us that often when they go to events and set up like that people stare at them the whole time, but nobody did that at this event. They were able to enjoy the event completely in their element, and which is what we wanted. So sensory and quiet spaces, I mean, we all think about that, I think, when we do our programs and events, but it's really important to understand that sometimes without these spaces, families actually can't come, or they have to leave early. So if something happens, a child becomes overwhelmed, or a family member becomes overwhelmed, if there's nowhere to go to recalibrate and calm the nervous system, it often means difference between having a great day and having to go home early upset. So we were very cognizant about having very definite areas for sensory recalibration, but also quiet spaces, which provided slightly different functions. So quiet space might be less of the what is in these pictures here, and just more of a space to retreat and to really calm the nervous system. They're so successful actually that we got a lot of traffic through these spaces. So it's important to make sure that they're big enough to handle the amount of traffic so that they're still a calming atmosphere. Staying with the SRDA's roots, which is about networking with our community service providers, we actually created a space for an expo. So we invited community services from across the region to set up little tables with information. And honestly, this place was so full I could barely get around the entire event. Often people with disability experience difficulty navigating community service systems. So this was a way to provide information in a really relaxed atmosphere where they could ask questions and wander around at their own pace. So we had over 1,000 people come through the event, and what's pretty cool about that is that's the capacity at my unit farm, and we did not advertise this event at all. So mainstream, we did not put it on social media, we did not put flyers up. We basically sent a couple of emails to some service providers and some special schools in the region just to test what would happen, and ultimately it flew around Victoria, and we had registrations from across Victoria, which shows me that there's a definite need for inclusive events like this. We had 21 service and community organisations, and as you saw by the pink vests, we had 25 access volunteers. The average satisfaction rating was 8.92% out of 10, and 100% of the respondents said they would attend again. But what's really important, I think, is that we developed some, I guess, templates and techniques and ways of working for inclusive events that were actually able to be transferred across mainstream events and across our councils. The City of Casey actually used the exact model to win a grant from Revive Live for 6 live music events across in the summer at Bunjil Place, and they won the grant specifically because of these working models. I was reflecting on this slide. I wrote this last week, and yes, all of this is true. I think, working with people with disability at first is very important. But I think the point is this can be used in 2 ways. I think you can do a targeted event where it's just for people with disability. And a targeted event is what we call positive exclusion. And that's an okay form of exclusion because it's actually creating a space just for them. I know for me personally, I found it a totally different experience to mainstream events, and my family was able to come and they stayed the whole time, which is literally unheard of. And the other way to do it is put it into a mainstream event, and as I just mentioned with the Revive Live grant. But when you design, universal design's all about designing for the people that need access the most, and then with the idea that it actually caters for the most amount of people possible. And so you can actually, if you think about it, any event you have, if you design like this, for the people who need it most, then you're more likely, to make your event really, really accessible. So thank you. That is all for today, and hopefully we'll have this event running again in 2027.
That would be incredible. Alex, thank you so much for sharing that. I'm curious, before we hand over to Kelly to share a little bit about the network, we understand the benefits of, creating spaces and places and events that are accessible for a multitude of reasons. I'm curious about the social aspect and what you might have heard, maybe about interactions and connection between different attendees, similar to the Cool Cabana example that Karen gave at the start. Did you hear anything through word of mouth about that and the value?
We did. We had so much feedback that we were honestly almost in tears most of the day. It was so exciting. Just people saying that they'd never not been able to come to an event before. So there was a parent who actually was so isolated. They had no connection with the community, no family, and they came to this event, and it was such a big step for them. Other people who just said, I feel like I can be my authentic self. I saw people grouping together. There was a certain spot where all the guide dogs chose to sit and relax, and that was really sweet. So it was, certainly, really was an amazing event and a great opportunity for people to come out and enjoy the community.
That's massive. And it says a lot, I think, coming from council to say, this is for everyone. We have services that are for you, and it's going to have those ripple on effects about feeling like they belong, and we're all part of the community, and there should be more spaces and places and programs like this. It's incredible, Alex. Kelly, I'm going to hand the mic, I should say, over to yourselves. A reminder that we've got until 1:15 in the diaries, but we understand if you've got to shoot off, you can always watch back. But really excited, Kelly, to hear about some of the work that's happening. I will formally introduce you. Kelly, you do incredible work as the Access and Inclusion Officer at Moonee Valley City Council, and you're going to share a little bit about the Victorian Local Government Disability Planners Network. You're also the Deputy Chair of the ALGA Disability Inclusion COP. So incredible experience and really excited to hear your insights. Over to you.
Thanks, Gemma. Can you see my screen sharing now? Fantastic. I feel like you've actually just had a simulation of a Victorian Local Government Disability Planners Network meeting. All this sharing of information, because I'm sitting here with this experience that I often have in a network meeting where it's almost like project envy. Oh, so much good stuff. I want to do that too. So it's really great to be able to talk about the network in context of hearing about all these other initiatives that have been happening. So hello, everyone, and thanks for the introduction, Gemma, and for the opportunity to share with you all about the network, the Victorian Local Government Disability Planners Network. A big thanks to MAV for the ongoing support that's provided to this group, one of whom is Ellie, who's in the room with us tonight. A big call out as well to other network members in the room for contributing to this amazing network. I can see a few faces, Karen, who's presented, and Alex, and I can see George and Monica and Alison. And I invite any of you to add to this presentation because I know that I'll miss bits and pieces. So as noted, my name is Kelly Armstrong and I'm the Access and Inclusion Officer at Moonee Valley Council. I'm one of the practitioners who contribute to the steering group for the Victorian Local Government Disability Planners Network. I've worked in local government for nearly 20 years, and most of that time it's been involved in this type of work, advocacy and inclusion for people with disability and carers. In fact, I was involved in establishing the Beach Access network that Karen mentioned earlier when I was working at the City of Port Phillip. Now that you've heard about some of the work across our councils, the destination flagship type of activities, I'll speak to one of the ways that we coordinate this work across the state and the nation. So my next slide should load. Doesn't seem to be changing from where I'm sitting. Oh, I see. Here we go. So you can see on the screen a graphic that demonstrates the relationships for the network. So underpinning all of this work at the bottom, you can see we have our community members, service providers and organisations, so people with living experiences of disability. As many of you know, there are 79 local government areas across Victoria. All of these will have a disability action plan or a disability inclusion access plan, and the officers driving that work, who are typically access and inclusion or disability planners, are invited to participate in this network. We meet every 2 months and usually have about 40 people each session, so it's well attended. It's been running for over 20 years and it's highly valued, and we have quite a privilege to have several wise practitioners amongst us. I'm not going to point fingers at those people. So the purpose of the network is to coordinate our activities, share best practice. We do some low-level advocacy via the MAV and occasionally via the Office for Disability as one of the state departments on behalf of our community and the sector. The MAV provides some secretarial support, which is where Ellie comes in, with managing the NMS team space and sending out meeting invitations along with a small amount of communications to the group. The steering group are all volunteers who come together and coordinate the agenda for the meetings, including any guest speakers, which might reflect updates on changes in the disability sector or other connected sectors. So some of the recent guest speakers have come from the NDIA, the National Disability Insurance Agency, the Office for Disability, who I mentioned before, or other state departments like the Transport Department. We've had various peak bodies such as Women with Disability Victoria or Disability Rights and Culture. And we've also had providers come and speak to us. So that might be Surge, who help with some of the access mapping that Alex, Catherine and Karen was speaking about before, the Australian Disability Network, which is another forum for professional membership, the Sunflower Hidden Disability Program, and so on. Typically, individual councils share about initiatives that are happening through their disability action plan work. At times, there have been regional partnerships to deliver an initiative, as you've heard from Alex, with the Southern Region Disability Alliance. We've also had the MAV in the past lead grant applications in partnership with several councils, for example, around addressing employment barriers. So coming back to the visual there, you'll see the different boxes there. One to the right-hand side, you'll see the state and territory representatives are members of the Australian Local Government Association, ALGA. And I'll speak a bit more on the next slide about the Disability Inclusion Community of Practice. Some of the key themes that are currently in discussion around Victoria include changes to the disability sector. So many of you will have heard about NDIS reforms. One of these is establishing foundational supports. So we're learning together in the network about what this means for local government's mainstream service offerings. Most people with disability are not eligible for NDIS funding. So that means that state funding, which is often through HAC PYP, Home and Community Care Programs for Young People, and that can be quite minimal as well. So councils are working towards greater inclusion of existing programs and services via our disability action plans. Another topic is the intersectionality of the disability experience. So within an individual, you might have different disabilities or health conditions along with identities or attributes that might be things like race or age, gender, culture, etc. Unfortunately, there is minimal disability-related data. And as many of you would know, this can influence our ability to measure impact. Next slide. So one of the recent activities that MAV and the Victorian Local Government Disability Planners Network has supported is the ALGA Disability Inclusion Project, which has happened over 2025 and 26. It was funded for 12 months by the Department of Health, Disability and Ageing, as it is an initiative that falls out of the Australian Disability Strategy, which is a 10-year document from 2021 to 31. The project has involved 35 representatives across Australia, along with state and territory membership representatives, the likes of MAV. 8 Victorians participated, and as Gemma mentioned earlier, Alex and myself have been in that group and have held the chair and deputy chair roles. Some of the learnings have included the observations that we have different legislation and practice between states. And you're probably interested to hear that Victoria has been doing some things really well, for example, gender equity. However, more opportunities have been shown through the work of our interstate and territory friends. There are 4 outputs for the project. The community of practice was established, which is kind of like the Victorian Local Government Disability Planners Network, but on steroids, as it involves secretariat support from ALGA to coordinate us all. On the screen there, you can see screenshots of the guide and a screenshot from ALGA's webpage showing the different webinars that have been produced. So these resources have been part of the work of the community of practice, and they're really relevant to all council officers, not just access and inclusion practitioners. So the guide is an update of an original 2016 publication, and you may be aware that much has changed in those 10 years. The NDIS was still in the rolling out phase in 2016. We've had the pandemic around COVID, and obviously there's technology advancements that have been occurring. So the guide now offers a central resource for all things disability inclusion and has wider application than just local government officers. So yeah, as I mentioned before, we've developed and published webinars and case studies through the community of practice. And we're always on the lookout for more examples of fantastic work. Next steps for the community of practice, which has been funded for another 2 years by the Department of Health, Disability and Ageing, which is very exciting. We are planning the next webinar, which is intending to socialise and promote the guide. So you're getting a bit of a sneak peek with this presentation now. It was only launched last week at the National General Assembly. We're also in the process of reviewing the terms of reference, and then there'll be a call out for expressions of interest for people to participate in the next phase of the community of practice. It will likely be promoted via state representative bodies such as MAV. I just thought I'd include this information because I presume many of you do not work specifically as access and inclusion practitioners. It's a screenshot from the guide. And I thought it would be helpful to centre the experiences of the disability community in Australia. So this slide shows about 5.5 million people identify as having a disability in our country. The data comes from the ABS Survey of Disability, Ageing and Carers, or SDAC. And they consider a person to have a disability if they have any limitations, restrictions, or impairment, which restricts everyday activities and has lasted or is likely to last for 6 months or more. This data demonstrates some of the compounding issues that Australians with disability and neurodivergent people experience. And neurodivergence is included in the spectrum of invisible disabilities. Some of the key themes currently in discussion include community attitudes to disability as a prominent issue. It's a bit of a wicked problem. The largest age group of people with disability is age-related. Community participation, including economic participation, is lower than their peers without disability. Many barriers are experienced. As I mentioned earlier, changes to the disability sector with NDIS and foundational supports. And we ruminate on how there is minimal disability-related data to support our work. Alex and I are quite passionate about that. As you'll know, without that data, measuring impact is really challenging. So if you have one key takeaway from today, let it be to consider how any future initiatives that you are involved in can include how to measure the impact or experience for people with disability compared to their peers without disability in your work. Next slide, and this is my last slide. So finally, I cannot miss an opportunity to promote the Hidden Disability Sunflower Program. This program is an opportunity to contribute to addressing community attitudes towards people with disability, and it provides tools for self-advocacy while also building the capability of your colleagues. As the program matures, there are more tools available to support the rollout locally. And one of these is a community of practice for local government practitioners across Australia. So I hope to see you there. And I'll finish off by saying Nungojan, which is thank you in Wurundjeri Woiwurrung language.
Kelly, thank you. What a wonderful way to round out some incredible case studies to kind of summarize up and look at the insights and the work that you and the network are doing. I would love to, now I'm going to spotlight you all and I'll bring you back and we'll have a bit of a conversation. We've got just over 10 minutes to go, and I've got a couple of questions written down here, but I also noted one in the chat. I thought I'd start you off. I'll let you all have a little think about this one. If you can share which one element or design feature would you say had the biggest impact, I guess, on a sense of inclusion, belonging, and sort of participation? Can you point to one thing, whether that's a physical pathway or a map? I'm just trying to find all our speakers, so bear with me. I'm really sorry. Trying to find you, Kelly. And we might start with you, Karen, if you can have a think about that question.
I think the thing that made the biggest impact in the beach access project that set us apart was the fact that we had the cabanas and the sun lounges there set up all ready for people. Yeah, and community were able to use it if it wasn't booked out. But yeah, community made way, and it was just a lovely space that brought everyone together.
Great answer. How about you, Catherine? Is there one design element or feature that really stood out?
Yeah, I think it's that the space is for your whole family. You can go and all play together, and there was for all ages, brothers, sisters. You can there's a fence too. That was really critical. That if a parent was specifically focusing on one child, then the others are going to be in too much danger of disappearing. So, yeah.
I think that's a great point, and it refers back to our point about being social and being in a space together and participating in a way that other people would. Alexandra, yourself in the event, was there something that really stood out?
I think what really stood out is the fact that it was a targeted approach to a mainstream event. So we were trying to replicate a mainstream style event, but just for people with disability. And there were a lot of comments within the community working group, members who talked a lot about umming and ahhing about events and checking all the details and trying to work out if they could go, by naming the event Disability at Dusk. There was no doubt, and that really they found quite relaxing, for a change, and really exciting.
Well said. Now, Kelly, I've got a question for you, and I guess this talks to the work all of you are doing about visibility and storytelling, and I think that makes a huge difference to our learning and our understanding. What do you see in the Planners Network when it comes to storytelling and trying to get out, I guess, the experience of people with lived experience? How critical is that for the network?
Oh, Gemma, can I have an opportunity to respond to the first question?
Yes, please. No, please. Yes, you're allowed.
Look, I really wanted to say that providing accessibility related information upfront can be really impactful for people where they don't need to go out of their way to search for it. And using sentences like contact us for any access requirements or bring your own headphones or ear defenders can really normalise the disability experience. So I think that's a really important thing for us to take away as having a really big impact. But coming back to your second question around disability and storytelling, and this is where I will be happily added to by my colleagues from the network. I would say centering the experience of lived experience is huge for us all as disability practitioners, disability inclusion practitioners. And I think one of the challenges there is trying to represent so many different disability experiences. I often use the phrase that disability is a big tent. But, it's a journey, isn't it, for us to improve and work on and build our skills in storytelling. And one of the challenges, I think, is working out what does your audience need to hear about this particular experience. So I think that's something that we're all continuing to learn.
That's a beautiful question that we can all take back to our work. Now I think we've probably got time for one more question for everyone, and I'll hand over to you all to answer. And that question is, if there's one thing you wanted everyone to take away from this, what would you like them to take back to their work? And while you're thinking about your answers, I would love to invite everyone who's still on the call with us to share in the chat a really fantastic space that you've been to in Victoria, or it could be beyond, that you've experienced as being really inclusive, wonderful, and been able to foster that sense of belonging. I know I recently visited the Melbourne Museum with a young person, and we were asked if we wanted a special backpack that contained headphones and a card with different images and icons and a fluffy toy to hold, and that just made the whole experience feel really welcoming and wonderful. So shout out to Melbourne Museum. Please share your tips in the chat. Karen, what would you like people to take away from this session as they go back to their work?
I would like people to get people with lived experience involved from the outset, because they know their lives better than anyone else. So getting them involved, asking them what they want and how they would solve problems is really, really important.
Beautifully said. Catherine, what about yourself?
Yeah, I totally agree with Karen that talking to as many people as you can, especially experts, and most valuable is the expert opinion of those with lived experience. But also don't forget the stuff that's not fun. The toilets, the paths, the car parking, they're not sort of the fun elements of a play space, but they are the critical elements.
Well said. Alex, how about yourself? What are you thinking about?
I immediately start thinking about, telling people that disability inclusion isn't scary. I think there's a lot of some of the main barriers is the lack of confidence that people without disability have in this space. And, I'm listening to Karen and Catherine, and they're both talking about long timelines, and, we spend a lot of time really developing these ideas. That's okay, because once they're done, they're very easily scalable across the local government sector and across your own council. And that represents that building of confidence. So don't be afraid to just dig in and solve a problem, because it's ultimately going to just proliferate.
Oh, well said. Thanks, Alex. And Kelly, what about yourself?
Well, I'll echo what my colleagues have said here, but I've already made a pretty explicit call out in terms of collecting data. So, and when I guess those measures and indicators are being identified, to include people with disability in that selection of those, so that's meaningful information.
That's wonderful. Well, I might let us go and have some dinner or go about the rest of our evenings now. It's been an absolute pleasure hearing about your projects and the work that you're doing. I invite everyone to join me in thanking our speakers. A big round of virtual or digital applause. And a reminder, we do these monthly, so please come along to our next one if you do. But thank you so much, speakers, and have a wonderful evening, everyone.